Good evening and welcome to my studio. I'm Art and I'm just digging out chisels. And hello Theo. We have a visitor tonight, Theo the cat. Yes, that's you. Anyway, you might be visiting. I'm carving. Oh yes. Hello. What are you up to? You're just going to sit there. Okay. Yes. We've got a gibberer in its ear. Yeah, we better do the ear. Definitely should do the ear. Okay. Flat blade. At this point, this could be interesting. But there again, that's what we're carving for. If it wasn't interesting, I wouldn't want to do it, I don't think. What are you up to underneath there, pussycat? That sudden downward jerk is something that's really hard to avoid. I wish I could. Okay. So I'll start by blocking it out. Which basically means just cut to the outline. Yeah. When the chisel goes down all of a sudden with a bang, what happens is you create dimples in the wood that you've just hit, which is what's happened here, which means I have to carve that bit of wood to get rid of the dimples. Which can sometimes be a bit of a pain to do, which is why you kind of don't get to finish level before you've finished. Give yourself spare capacity, spare wood, whatever you want to call it, so that you don't actually carve to your final level before you finally get there. So that you don't get that bang. You don't therefore create little cuts in the wood that you didn't want to create. The Hero John, thank you very much for the host. That's very kind of you. Now then, there we go. Whenever you're carving, you never pull wood off. If the wood doesn't come off its own accord, it means it's still attached. If it's still attached, pulling it can mean you pull off more than you intended. Which, when you're close to finishing, and we're not exactly that close to finishing, but when you, especially when you're close to finishing, it can mean that you pull away wood that you did not intend to cut. Okay, what I'm doing now is... Haha, Wolfie! Good evening, welcome, thank you for the host as well. What I need to do now is I'm just going to use a V-gouge just to get into the corners. So, how is everybody this evening? So, the V-gouge just allows me to get right into the corner. And I'm now going to switch to this little tiny V-gouge just to get right down into this corner here. Sorry if I'm shading what I'm doing, but or covering what I'm doing there, but I need the control of being able to position the chisel where I want it. Hello, the Hero John, the Hero John. I may end up just calling you John if you don't mind, or if you do mind, I'll call you the Hero John. But welcome to the studio. Sorry, it's a bit of a play on words, really, is that? Thank you for dropping in. So, okay. Now that I've created some cuts in this bottom down here that I didn't, or in this piece here that I really didn't want to do, but kind of had no choice about it. What I now need to do is remove them, and the only way of removing them is to carve the surface down past them, but I'd left some spare anyway, or some leeway, so because I knew it would happen. So this particular level here isn't down as far as I want it to go when I originally carved it, specifically because I knew that when I cut down those edges, that's what would happen. The chisel would go down with enough force to actually sort of create a cut. And in a finished carving, those cuts don't look particularly pleasant. Okay, that's most of them gone already. I'm carving in totally the wrong direction, but I don't have the wood grain angle. I mean, trying to carve upwards is wrong, but I didn't have much choice, or not having much choice, so just taking it carefully. This particular bit here I can get in, and avoid the problems that you get from trying to carve in the wrong direction. Oh no, there's a few more cuts there. Okay, that needs to go deeper still. So this is the wrong direction to carve in, because if I'm not careful, the chisel will dig in. And if it does, I'll end up taking a lot more off than I intended. Oh well, thank you very much for the compliment, John. That's very nice of you to say. If it inspires somebody else to be creative, then that's a good job. A good job done. Sorry, I normally stand like that, so when I look, of course the camera's there. But when I stand here, I'm automatically looking over there, and that doesn't help. I would say, if it is inspiring you to carve and you haven't carved before, this is kind of a little bit advanced. It's not an easy thing to carve just because of all the small spaces and levels. As a beginner, you'd probably start with something a little bit simpler to carve with. But carving can be well. It's great. It can be great fun. It can also be frustrating at times. If you are interested in carving, then it's not an exceptionally expensive hobby to start with. It can get there, like most things, but to start carving, I'm doing hand carving here, or what I'm using is what they call palm chisels. Reason being, hold them in the palm of your hand. So you get 4-ish kind of chisels. You get palm chisels like this, which you hold in the palm of your hand. You'll get sort of hand chisels, which have got a longer handle and you can sort of get hold of and grasp them. You don't see a lot of those, but they tend to be also handles that you can drive with a mallet. To those sort of hand-based chisels, and then you get the chisels with the really long handles, which are meant for working on lathes, and you don't use those for carving at all, generally speaking. So you can start with with palm chisels or hand chisels. It is worth getting good quality tools. When if you want to start, the chisel is the bit that's doing all the work. So a good quality chisel is not cheap necessarily, but it is worth it. Okay, because if your chisel is blunt or bends, it's really hard to do good work. And a blunt chisel is actually dangerous. So you want to learn it all. It's kind of what I'm doing. I tend to do that as well. So yeah, but for carving, you kind of need to start with 2 chisels. Sometimes people will say 3. One of them is a flat chisel, like this. It's called a flat chisel because it's flat. Sorry, but it is. Another one you start with is something called a gouge, or a U-gouge. Now, a size is a bit of an awkward sort of thing. You probably start with something. This is a really shallow one. Possibly something either like this, which is a really sharp It's a really shallow U-gouge. I don't know if you can see it, but it is actually U-shaped. And it's really shallow, or perhaps more likely one like this. Again, they're not really very wide chisels, and you kind of don't need to. You know, you can get wider chisels. Wider chisels offer some advantages, but in a lot of cases, for a lot of work, they don't. You work with smaller chisels. So these are probably the two starting chisels. A U-gouge, which is not too shallow, not too deep, and a flat chisel. You can do 90% of stuff with these two. And the additional chisels just make certain things easier. So the third one that some people will often say is something called a V-gouge. So instead of U-shaped, it's V-shaped. If you can see that. I would say it's got a sharpish point, if you see what I mean, and that allows you to get into some corners, do things like this marking I've got here, which is hair, and with those three you can do lots and lots of things, and carve quite a few things. So, but that's probably with just two of these chisels. That's probably about, as a set, would be in the order of 30 UK pounds, about 40 euros, 45, $50, something like that, for those, and that's kind of a starting thing, and then wooden is on top. And wood is a highly personal sort of thing. Some people like some woods, other people like other woods. This is European lime wood, also known as basswood. It's a really good wood for carving. It's soft enough that you don't have a lot of problems, but it's hard enough that you don't have a lot of problems, and it's the grain structure is really nice for carrying nice, clean, sharpish, well-defined carving edges. So it's a good beginner's wood. The other thing that's also worth getting, and usually you can get them in sort of kits with chisels, is they describe it often as a sharpening block. It's technically it's a honing block, but you do use this to use this along with a polish to recover the really sharp edges on your chisels. After about 10 or 15 minutes of use, your chisel starts getting blunt, noticeably blunt, and you use something like this to recover that sharp edge. And again, when you're carving, you can actually feel the difference. So you do tend to sharpen chisels like this about every 15 minutes. By sharpening, I mean using it's often also called a strop, or you're honing it. You don't actually use sharpening stones; they're too abrasive most of the time for what you're using. Yes, sorry, I'm just thinking what I was currently doing. Yeah, make sure your chisels are sharp. Sorry, that was just something I was just thinking of then, because the sharper the chisel, it's a lot easier to carve with, and it's a lot less dangerous, which seems counterproductive, or counterintuitive, but it is. That's okay. So I've got, when I originally got this block, I've drawn on it what I wanted, and I've been carving that out ever since. So I was just trying to work out my lines here. I'll just go yeah. Sculpting is about the only thing I haven't tried. I carve, I airbrush paint, I can draw. But sculpting is something I haven't tried at the moment, and I kind of do say at the moment because I think I've learned not to say I don't want to do something. And it's almost a joke on the stream, because a long time ago now, about 18 months ago, I said on the stream that I really liked watching the glass blowers, and it's something that's always fascinated me, but I wasn't going to do it. I probably will do that sometime this year. And it kind of became almost a joke on the stream, that because in fact actually at the time when I said and I don't want to do it, somebody actually came back in chat and said yet, which was highly amusing, but he has actually turned out probably to be right in that it was a yet. Although I must admit the reason I changed my mind is because I sort of worked out it wasn't actually as expensive as I thought it was. Talking of sculpting, one of the things that I don't know whether you're aware of is, but there is a material called soapstone, and it is stone, so I understand, but it's as soft as soap. Cuts very easily, so literally with chisels, like the wood chisels or sharp knives, you can carve it as well. But it's like stone, so it's a bit like a sculpted thing afterwards, but you've carved it. Yeah, this is an awkward thing to get at, to carve, so I'm going to switch from a hand chisel to a rotary tool. Yeah, I've got a bit in there because I can get in a lot easier with this. Paintbrush. This tool is rather like a Dremel, but better. One of the ways it's better is the fact that you can currently hear me. If this was a Dremel, it would be extremely loud. But this actually also spins a heck of a lot faster than a Dremel does, which makes controlling it a lot easier. And it's really good, as you might be able to see, for turning wood into sawdust. And by sawdust I mean dust. Now you can carve, and some people do completely with power tools like this. There's nothing wrong with that. It produces a different look. I find, well, without taking a lot of care, it produces a rougher finish, and I prefer not to sand. So I like to do what they call finish carving, which means that when I finish carving, I've finished carving. I don't sand it again afterwards. And without taking extreme care with a power tool like this, you usually or often do need to sand afterwards. And if you're doing big areas like this, this can take an awfully long time, especially if you're using tiny bits like this. Of course, there are power tools available, which are what they call hanging motors, or they work with a flexible shaft basically, and they will swing big 1/4" shank tools, so you can get big cutters like about 1.5 inches across that would rip this whole thing to bits in about 10 seconds flat. Really good if you like carving big things. But they can also actually swing something this as well, so you know they are flexible too. And it's very easy for the rotary tool for it to run away. And the faster you spin it, actually, the less likelihood that there is of that happening. So that's one of the reasons why this is actually better than a Dremel. It's less likely to catch in the wood and suddenly shoot and cut somewhere that you didn't intend it to. This is spinning at something like, was it about 38,000? Yeah, 38,000 RPM. A Dremel, I think barely makes about 10, I believe, off the top of my head. I could be wrong, but it's certainly not as fast as this. And that makes a difference when you're trying to control it. Have you tried any sort of carving or anything, John? And even the thing with anything, whether it's carving or even drawing, the trick to getting started is start. I know a lot of people often express an interest in doing things like drawing and stuff, but of course all you need is a bit of paper and a pencil to start, and that's the trick, is actually starting. And consistently keeping up doing it. If, like me, you like doing lots and lots of things, then that can be quite hard to be consistent about doing it and practicing, but you get to have more fun by doing other things as well sometimes. So as you might see, rather than trying to fiddle with a blade, this is a lot easier just to get in here. I will probably come back in with a blade in a minute. To clean some of the edges up a little bit. Yep, will do. So that saves quite a lot of time sometimes. Just turn that off so I don't accidentally, because I have a habit of when I'm using a sharp chisel like this, to make it go forward I have a habit of standing on the electric control, which of course serves no purpose whatsoever, but it does tend to make the drill, well, the motor there, spin up of course, and that can sort of startle you if you're not careful. By the way, that particular tool officially isn't known as a drill, it's called a micromotor. Okay, so that just got me in there. Background. Not too bad. Okay, this is an ear. And I'm trying to work out the best way of carving it, because of course it's curved. It's like a cat ear. I've now got to carve a curve on this. Which isn't actually all that difficult to do, but just getting it at the right place may prove to be a little bit more difficult, just because I don't have a lot of room. And where I need to get into, sort of, I've got these obstructions around, which just make it a little bit more fun. It's fun, you know, it really is. Having a curve actually isn't particularly difficult. Essentially what you do is, it would be called chamfering, but you cut the edge out, the corner off, which then gives you two corners, so you cut those off, which gives you so many more corners. And you cut those off, and if you keep cutting the corners off, you eventually sort of create what looks like to be a smooth curve. Now the ear doesn't want to come this far forward, because this is this wood surface here is kind of like the point of the nose, and the ears are a long way further back, so I need to carve this downwards. That reminds me, I forgot to find my safety glasses. Now, because this chisel is sharp, it's doing most of this work. Yes, I am pushing it gently, but what I'm doing, what's taking much more strength, is not pushing it, but guiding it. Because I'm guiding the chisel to go exactly where I want it to go. And surprisingly, that often can take more strength or control than simply just pushing the chisel as hard as you can. Which wouldn't be safe, by the way. Right, let me put a stop cut in there. Stop cut stops the wood from splitting where I don't want it to split. When I do this and I know the wood splits, it stops it running over into this area here. Because the wood's already cut through, it can't continue past. Bomb Beast, thank you very much for the follow, that's very kind of you. Welcome to the studio. I was about to say I trust you're enjoying what you're seeing, but you followed, so you probably are. Dragon Slumber, hello! I'm sorry, I'm a little bit concentrating a little bit on what I'm doing. Welcome. What am I doing here? Occasionally. Occasionally do forget. No, this is an ear. That's the teeth. There. In fact, this is probably the right way around. So this is the mouth. This is an ear, so I'm just carving the ear further down into the background. So I've carved out the mouth, or the mouth cavity. And then I've got some indication of where the teeth are going to be, but I've got this full face to shape, and as I'm doing so, that I'll be continuously recarving the positioning of the teeth as I take out the guidelines that I've got in place, because I'll be carving down here. I'll slice the surface off, I'll then have to go in and put the guidelines back in and continue carving as I go down. But at the moment here I am just trying to get this ear to a level that I am happy with. Now this is relief carving, and because of that it's a relatively shallow carve. So I mean, if this was a 3D object, you know, even at this size, the board would have to be about this thick for the Gibberer, even at this sort of scale. It's not, it's only about sort of an inch, well, half an inch to an inch deep. So I've got to exaggerate things a little bit, or I suppose technically that's under exaggerate things. So instead of this being sort of 3 inches back on its head, it's going to be about half a centimetre. Now then, what to do is come at it this way. There's a right way to carve a piece of wood and a wrong way to carve a piece of wood. If you carve it the wrong way, it looks all rough and the wood splits off. Carve it the right way and you cut the wood and you get a nice smooth surface. He wants to ask me something. Well, he's quite welcome to do so. If you want to ask something, Dragon Slumber, feel free to do so. I don't always promise to answer questions, but you are at least welcome to ask them. Oh, just, well, Wolfie, now you're stirring things up a little bit, aren't you? I'm working with sharp chisels, and there's two things with working with sharp chisels, and one is, if I'm not careful, I'm not watching what I'm doing or concentrating on what I'm doing, I can cut myself. That's not a good outcome. The other thing about sharp chisels, if I'm not concentrating on what I'm doing and I sort of just try, you know, look away, I can end up cutting something off that I don't want cut off. That also is not a good outcome. So I do sometimes sort of spend a fair bit of time, you know, looking at what I'm doing rather than chat. Though, I mean, I can see chat out the side of the corner of my eye, so I do sometimes see it move up. But I am usually concentrating, and when I'm concentrating on things like this, it does take me a few seconds, shall we say, to see something in chat. You can usually tell, Wolfie, when I'm lost in something because I also stop talking. So when I've stopped talking and I don't look at chat, that's when I get lost in it. It can be easy to just get lost in the work that you're doing. And it's fun. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm concentrating on getting it right, and I just tune out everything else. It's a good thing to do sometimes, especially when you work in an office, because that, well, not that you carve in an office, but when you work in an office, being able to tune out everything else lets you concentrate on stuff. Now then, just a second. Carving is also warm. Now I'm going to take this down a little bit more. So the wood grain here is virtually flat but tilts down very slightly. And what that means is I can't come from this side here when I'm carving, because it will tend to lift and rip the wood. So what I have to do is, what you do when you're carving is you cut something called cross grain, literally across the grain of the wood. So I either have to come this way, and again it's really hard because the chisel will want to tip to match the grain of the wood, and again it'll lift and break off. So I actually have to come in from this sort of angle here, that way. So I'm cutting into the hill, if you like, and it's not necessarily an easy angle to get at. Sorry, I'm a little bit amused by the fact that the way I'm carving this. I'm just wondering if I was making anybody uncomfortable. I know Wolfie's heard the story before, but the reason behind that statement is that a lot of people, and I've said it in the past, got uncomfortable with the fact that I am driving this chisel towards myself. I'm cutting towards myself, and most people know you don't cut towards yourself ever. But that's a guideline, not a rule. And it's a guideline they teach to beginners because beginners don't understand the rules. And it's actually a lot safer than when you know what you're doing. It's safe to do as long as you know what you're doing. If I was doing a lot of it, I'd turn the piece of work around, just because it's actually easier to carve away from yourself than it is towards yourself. You don't get cramp in your hand, for example, quite as easily. Yeah, I know you've heard the story about 1,000 times, Wolfie, but that's because you frequent the stream. Tell you what, you tell them why it's safe. Right, so that's part of the ear. I think that's probably, it's not really, it isn't really deep enough. Let's make it, I know. What I'm going to do is change the shape of the ear a little bit. Yep. You're right there, Wolfie. Wolfie's trying to explain is a beginner would probably get hold of a chisel like this and start trying to do this on the work of the wood. And if it jams or is a slight awkward, they'll put more force on into it. What they're doing is they're pulling the chisel with their arms. It makes me uncomfortable. They're pulling the chisel with their arms, and if the chisel gets stuck and they put more force on it, you can imagine what might happen. The way I was doing it is my hands are on the wood and I'm using my fingers to hold the chisel, two of them, well, two pairs, and I can't physically move the chisel any more than that. And I never use my arms to pull the chisel, I'm only using my fingers. That's why it's safe. And the other thing is, if the chisel gets stuck, it's kind of like the wood's way of telling you you're doing it wrong. Or you're doing something wrong, so you stop at that point and reassess what you're doing. Okay, my original intention was to carve this ear sort of flat, but if I do that it's going to get really sort of rather close and badly defined. So what I'm just doing is tilting the ear up a bit like this, so I'm getting this bit further down into the wood, so it will look like the ear's tilted forward, if you can imagine that. And that way I can get both the depth that I want without it disappearing into the background that I don't want. So that'll do for the moment, I think. Now what I want to do here is actually carve the ear itself, or the ear shape itself. And again, the wood does not like the direction I'm cutting it in, but at this particular point I have no choice. So the surface there is really rough. And that's a really good indication that it's been carved at the wrong angle or in the wrong direction, because it should be smooth. One of the things that will help actually is for me just to give this a little bit of a sharpen. There we go, that's all it needs. And it may not look like I did much there in terms of sharpening this, but it is a lot sharper than it was just a moment ago. And the wood is cutting a little bit more cleanly. Now then, what I'm going to try and do is carve the inside of the ear, or carve an ear pocket like a cat would have. It's like a big sort of shell type shape. So, you know, that I can't get my hands, but that sort of shape. So I'm going to try and carve that in there. I'm actually thinking I might do that with the power tool. But first, a drink. Yeah, we'll use the power tool. It's I want to try and undercut it a little bit, and it's easier with the power tool than it is with a chisel. So I'm just switching. This is a sort of an inverted cone that's in here at the moment, and I'm just changing it for a very small ball shape. And this one might be a bit blunt, but that might be a good thing. One thing with Rushy cutters like this is, as I'm looking down, this is rotating clockwise. So if I move the tool left to right, it's less aggressive than if I move it right to left. So you can adjust how aggressive you want the tool to be just by which direction you move it in. Now by switching to a bowl shaped tip like this, I'm more likely to be able to get a nice smooth piece of wood in the carve area, or smoother. It takes a lot of work to get it as smooth as using a chisel. And I may well just resort to using a chisel afterwards to clean this up. On the other hand, I might not actually clean it up because it's an ear, and it's the inside of an ear, and who says that's smooth on a gibberer? It might be better left sort of slightly rough, sort of, you know, like in our own ears you've got the ridges and what have you. So one thing when you're carving, you can make decisions like that and change your mind, and you're doing the right thing. It's also really useful when you make a mistake, because you can simply change a mistake into something that you want just by changing the story. Great way of hiding mistakes in plain view. Turn a mistake into a feature. It's a bit like software development really. That's not a bug, it was an unintended feature. And as I'm doing this, I'm sort of cutting half the ear. I'm also gradually tilting it inwards. I'm marked as being the stream is Hearthstone related. Yes, this is a Hearthstone card, or it's the top end of a Hearthstone card. Lord Ripwin, hello, good evening, welcome to the studio. One of the Hearthstone cards that were released around about December was one of the new packs was the feral Gibberer, which I still find amusing because that implies that some Gibberers are domesticated, but I'm not sure I'd like one for a pet. And just before they were, well, whilst they were being released, I made a pyrography or image of the feral Gibberer, the card, and it seemed like a good subject to make a carving. So this is the top end of the card, above the from the banner upwards. And I don't know yet whether I'm going to put the jewel in with the number 1 on it or not. I may just cut that off and we'll just have the sort of feral Gibberer and the image itself. But that's what I'm doing. So this one is we've designed this one because I mean a card is flat. So what we've done with this one is I'm going to put the frame around it, but I'm carving this Gibberer here in front of this frame here. So this is in your on the cards. This is kind of like a window that you're looking through, and the Gibberer's behind it. In the carving here, by putting it in front of this, we've got the Gibberer coming through the window to get at what's in front of it. So by making it stand proud, we're making it look like it's coming through the window. Just a minor change really, but a little bit of a fun one I think, because it's sort of coming out to get you. No, I'm looking at a reference picture. I mean, I do have a reference picture. I'm now largely doing this just by looking at it, but I do have the reference picture of the card, which is that one there. So we're effectively doing something that looks like that. It's not an exact copy by any means, and of course the Gibberer is in front of the frame rather than behind it. So that was the initial layout, using that. So where the Gibberer was, and the jewel and the banner and things like that. But from then on, it's just been free carved. So I'm looking at this and going, you know, like the ear, I want to make the ear this depth in this particular position. And we're just working at it. What looks good. Like I think this ear actually probably I'm going to make it a little bit thinner, but just looking at now, this bit's a bit thick. Actually, Dragon Slumber, I should actually be also appearing in the creative section as well. If I recall correctly, because one of the groups I'm also broadcasting as part of is woodworking, and that being a creative group means that I also show up in the creative category. Oh, I was. It's a few years ago now, and yes, Wolf is correct. I've been doing tech support stuff for when did I stop doing it? Computer tech support was I probably stopped about 15 years ago, but I was doing it around the time when the IBM PC came out, and for a few years after that, quite a few years after that. So yes, we were talking, I think we were talking yesterday about, or was it the day before? Must have been the day before, I think, about the stories that you often, well, I'm sure you know if you're doing the game, but the stories that you often hear about tech support asking people if you turned it on. And that really, when I was doing that, was really the sort of thing we had to do, and you literally had to talk people through checking whether they turn on the monitor or the computer or the terminal, and not only that, whether it was actually plugged in. Because quite often they'd say things like, yeah, it's turned on, and it isn't plugged in, but it's that sort of thing. So those sorts of silly things that not many people actually believe are true really are true. Oh, I've done that as well. No, at the time, yeah, knowing people that knew a lot about it. Yeah, that's such a lot about it. Is there a green light on it? Oh, sorry. Well, I was telling Wolfie. I mean, you did have to say things like, because back then when they were first out, of course, you had green screen monitors and not colour. And if you said, can you see a green light on it? You had to be careful, because the on power light was a green light as well in this particular case, anyway, and so was a flashing cursor. And that's obviously not the same thing. And you even had to go into, can you see brightly lit? Because you also had a problem with burning on those monitors. So if you sort of say, could you see text on the screen? You actually had to say, can you see glowing, lit up text on the screen? Because it was a completely different thing. But actually I have done computer support with VAX mini computers with people who did know what they were doing, and it's amazing how easy it is for people who do know what they're doing to miss the extremely obvious things. Back then there weren't any cup holders. They were floppy drives. Of course, the cup holders came a lot later. No, we've had the one more than once where we've had people, a person ring up and say, the monitor's not working. Okay, well, what's wrong with it? Well, there's smoke coming out the top. Right. Can you switch it off? Unplug it from the mains. Quickly. Come back, and they go, is there something wrong with it? Is it going to work? Depends on what's wrong with it, of course. Well, I've just wondered whether it was anything to do with the cup of coffee I had on the top. I knocked it over and spilt it all in the insides, but that hasn't done any damage, has it? And of course, numerous cups of coffee and Coca-Cola over keyboards as well, but they're a relatively easy fix. Well, they are when you know what you're doing. You go out to the customer with those, give them a replacement keyboard. Because I worked in a business, I wasn't supporting home computers and things like that, but in the business, you go to the office, give them a new computer, take the other one away, go into the toilet, and flush it under the hot water tap for about 10 minutes, and then take it back into your own office, leave it there for a couple of 3 days or a week or so to dry out, and it works perfectly. But yeah, cup holders. I remember those. A little bit after my time in terms of those particular ones. I guess we ought to explain that for people who may be watching and don't understand what the cup holder is. Because in fact, the computers these days, a lot of them don't have the cup holders. They come totally without them, because you don't really get software on CDs and DVDs. The cup holder was a CD holder, CD tray, which used to come out to put the CD in, and yeah, people really did think that it was a cup holder, especially as some of them had sort of a cutout in them that kind of looked like a cup ought to sit in them, and they often were sort of slightly V-shaped, and people would think they were that shape because to let you have a larger or smaller cup. People are brilliant. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they are these days, so you feed them in. And of course, for the consoles, not an experience of this, but reputedly, of course, with consoles, children used to feed things like toasting. I mean, I can't actually see toast because the slot's a bit too thin for that, but bits of paper and stuff like that. Yeah, the cup holders. That came about more for cars actually, because when CD drives started coming in cars, because the cars did of course used to have pop-out cup holders. But yeah, so I think maybe people just transferred the experience into their home. I mean, I am told that people, by some of our support groups now in the company I work in, that some people are still as intelligent now as they were back then. They're just not necessarily as funny as they used to be. I remember once going into an office where person was claiming that the text was upside down on the screen, and when I got there, because I couldn't understand that one, when I got there, indeed the text was upside down on the screen. The reason being is that it turned the screen upside down. And the reason they turned the screen upside down was because probably a period of time, I think they said, I can't remember how long now, like a week or so ago, shall we say, somebody had installed, because this was in like the early days of Windows, somebody had installed a joke program, and what it did was it inverted the screen, just a 180-degree inversion. So the person had taken the monitor and turned it upside down, and for some reason the application, the joke thing, wasn't working anymore, so it had reverted to normal, but now the text was upside down and they reported it as being text upside down. Oh, yeah, yes, that's probably true actually. I hadn't thought about that one, but it is probably true. So I'm guessing. I'm guessing. I mean, it's you know the game Car Mechanic. I have been told by a couple of mechanics that people have been going in you know, to the dealers and things like that, and sort of saying, you know, this is what's wrong with my car, you know, and why do you want sort of 3 hours to change an exhaust or whatever? Because it only takes me 10 minutes, you know, you just undo this bolt here and it drops out, and things like that, because they've been playing car mechanic and think they know everything. But I was just thinking, I wonder how many people went in to car dealers saying, having put the CD in the cup holder, why isn't it playing music? Right, I've sort of carved a nice sort of shape there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to undercut this bit here so that it looks like, if you're looking from this angle, the ear sort of goes inside under the fold. I'm now trying to think of some of the other stories. Sometimes they come straight to you without, and other times I just can't remember half of them. I also can't remember half the abbreviations. Of course, there was less concern back then about, you know, these days support technicians, etc. in notes don't write things like the user is stupid. You know, they are potentially a lot more polite about it now, but I mean, there still sort of exists some of the abbreviations that were around and originated back in those times. And I think, for being a polite one of my favourites is still the PEBCAC, problem exists between keyboard and chair, which of course is a nice way of saying that the user's stupid. That's disingenuous. I mean, no user's stupid, they just don't understand, or it hasn't been explained to them properly, or they haven't bothered trying to learn. But you know what I mean. It is true, people don't separate them at all very well. There's a guy, Projector Games. He's both here on Twitch, and well, he dual broadcasts onto Twitch and onto YouTube. Whether you know him, he's the developer for Fortress Craft Evolved. Perhaps you ought to have a few words with him as well, because he deals with people from the developer's point of view and supports them. And I'm sure he can tell you some interesting stories as well about people. Broken English? No, not back then. So I really couldn't say anything about it back then. I mean, I now have the opposite effect, because I'm kind of now. I'm now on the other end of it, where I no longer in computer support, so in theory I have to rely on the computer support group to support me, and they are in India, and so sometimes the language is interesting, trying to understand what it is that they're actually meaning. But broken English hasn't really been a problem as such, because they actually speak English quite well. They have the different styles and different ways of saying things are sometimes interesting and challenging. It also does it. It's become that well known that it auto completes. I like that. Dragon Slumber, thank you very much for the follow. That's very kind of you. I'm just trying to remember what it is now. Yeah. Trying to remember. I think UFUI used to be one. And I'm trying to remember now what the polite, because if anybody asked you what the abbreviations meant, and I'm trying to remember what the UFUI, as in you. I can't even remember how we used to pronounce it. Ufui or something like that. I'm trying to remember what the polite one was, but the UF user interface was the polite way, and I can't remember what the UF bit was in the polite version, but user effed it up was what it actually meant. Thank you very. Oh, I've got to allow that one through, haven't I? Thank you. I wonder quite why the auto mod held that one for review. Do you stream any of the work that you're doing, Dragon Slumber? I was just kind of wondering what word it is that it picked up on to think it would perhaps need authorization. Do you? In that case, I could say one of the things I ought to ask is what time zone. Not something I really admit I've not actually 30 hours a week Eastern Standard Time. Oh, okay, that might explain it a bit, because one of these I'm now looking for. Okay, do that. Yeah. 1540 you stream at 1900. That'll be why. What I was just looking to do was to follow there. The reason I asked is because I would take a look. And potentially watch you. I watch during working hours. I'm in the UK, so I sometimes have a stream on because I work better with noise, and I work from home, so I don't have a lot of noise. So sometimes to concentrate, I put a stream on or streams. I don't watch it, if you know what I mean. It's just like a colleague in the background type of thing, and occasionally I'll take a look and see what's going on. But of course, you being Eastern Standard, I'm no longer at work, so it's a case of now, like as you just mentioned, your starting time is about when I go to bed. Yeah, I've never not come across other people doing it. I'm quite not surprised, but I've never actually sort of come across somebody who said they did it. I kind of I do listen to it, but I don't interact. It's kind of more like lurking, and I don't watch it consistently. But for example, people coding, I quite often do like to watch and see how they do it and listen to their problems and stories and things. There we go. I think that I've got to do a bit more shaping on this here, in actual fact. I've misshaped this here because I want this to come down. Yeah, unfortunately not. And I mean the other difficulty is I finish work 7 p.m. sorry 5 p.m. GMT. I then immediately sort of go and make an evening meal. I start streaming here then at 7 o'clock GMT and until 9 p.m. And so and then I've got about an hour left to clean up and do everything else before I go to bed. So, but if I can, I was about to say, do you record the videos or do you not bother? Oh, you have recorded some of them. Okay, I might take a look at a few of those because I can play the VODs whilst I'm working. How long does it take? That's about asking how long it takes to program a game. Obviously it depends on the complexity of what it is that you're carving. It depends on the wood that you're doing and how good you are at doing it. So this sort of, well, the Gibberer here will probably be in the order of, for me, about 20 hours. It's a relatively complex thing because of things like the small spaces around here in the mouth, a lot of hair. It's the first time I've carved anything like this, so again it's sort of new-ish to me in terms of how do I go about doing it. It's, you know, if I've done one or two it might be a bit easier, but something like a rose, which I have here. If I did that on basswood rather than ash, which is what this is, that's probably about 3 or 4 hours for something like that, and the painting's extra, of course. Something like Ruth here. He took, so it's that way, isn't it? He took about 40 hours in the end, and that's partly because I had to recarve this wing about 4 times because I kept making a mistake as to how it was joined to the body, and every time I made a mistake it meant I had to carve it again, and this piece got gradually sort of thinner. But something like about 40 hours for something like that. About another 15 minutes. This one isn't. I mean, this one isn't actually fantastically detailed as such. I mean, it's hair, but that itself is time-consuming, but isn't fantastically difficult to do because it is literally just random strokes. Something like Ruth, actually, there's a lot more detail in Ruth than there is in the Gibberer here, and the rose itself is actually relatively simple to do. In fact, because this is ash is really hard wood to carve. It's quite a strong wood, which is why this is relief carved, but this is why the relief only goes that far around the outside. I mean, this was a scrap bit of wood anyway, and this was the first carving I ever did on stream, and I didn't even have a clamp at the time, which made it more difficult. But that's yes, it was really hard. So that's normally with relief carving like this, you take the back, you don't leave the background and dig in. Although it's an interesting thing to do, is that. But if I'd have realised I was going to do that, I'd have moved it so that I didn't have this leaf sticking out. And thinking about it afterwards, what I should have done was just cut that leaf off. But it's easy to, hindsight's a wonderful thing. Okay, so let me do a little bit more with this ear. Just at here, I want the ear to come to a point. Or at least to look like it comes to a point. What I'll do now is I'll get out a tiny little gouge so that I can just get into here. I could do it with the power tool. Kind of in this particular area here, I don't want sort of the rough texture. I kind of want it just to be sort of smooth. I mean, there's meant to be a sort of a wall behind here, but I kind of don't want to draw attention to this area of the image. And the best way of not drawing attention to it is to make it smooth. Noise, or no, this is kind of noise. And this sort of thing is what draws people's attentions to particular areas. So this bit is just a bit of random background that I don't want people to concentrate on, so I want it smooth. I get lots of requests for doing things like carving. No, not a great deal. I mean, Wolfie always wants me to carve something. Actually, Wolfie wants me just to keep doing different things. I think I've had... I mean, things like the pyrography, which I sell. I think I've had... okay. I get commissioned like that outside of Twitch. I've never actually had a commission off of Twitch for doing the pyrography, but that's the one that I get more requests, if you like, to do things with than the carving. I think though, I won't exactly say that this was Wolfie's request. I think she has requested I do a World of Warcraft. Was it World of Warcraft? Next, he says, thinking I can't actually remember. I know you sent me some. I've still got screenshots. Thing is, I mean, with something like carving here, I mean, this takes, as I mentioned, about 20 hours, 20 plus hours, shall we say. And that kind of means that's 10 or more streams, and sort of people who do requests kind of want to see, asking for things. They kind of want to see the results a lot quicker than that. So I don't think they tend to. That's probably why they don't tend to make too many requests of things. know you quite often get people asking, could you carve X, Y or Z? Which can be interesting at times to try and answer those sorts of things, but unfortunately the thing I find, especially with things like carving, is that people seriously underestimate how long something takes. League of Legends. I was trying to think, I thought LOL, LOL, but I thought I can't remember what that means, so that's why I went for WoW. Still 2 letters. Yeah, I'm quite happy to take commissions, or consider commissions. I haven't had any for carving, other than family, if you see what I mean. Most of the carving that I've done is been just purely for me, just a subject that interested me. The pyrography though is, and I've had quite a few pyrography things. I did a couple of portraits just before Christmas that were somebody wanted for Christmas presents, and I've done a couple of things for ladies. So that's my wife, but I'm just trying to think don't always do them on stream though. And the other thing that I do sell though is the jewellery, so chainmail. There's some beadwork, and that's what Moobot keeps mentioning in chat from time to time. Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yes, I was just thinking you'll have come across that phenomenon as well, won't you? I guess for you particularly, it'll be the just phenomenon, won't it? Can't you just add? It won't take you very long. But yeah, they often seriously underestimate something, even something like I've got one just to hand. I'm not sure. Let me just grab one. Actually, I might as well grab this one. So, I think off the top of my head there was about 20 hours of work in this. I'm just trying to get it so it doesn't. But this is the Gibberer that was done just for the fun of it. This will go up in the shop as well at some point. It's another one of those. I have to find the time to do it, but I've asked many. One of the problems that I find with pyrography is people have seen it done on the internet, and just about every pyrographic artist that I've come across on the internet uses time lapse, or speeds up the video. So something like this will sort of play in about 20 minutes. And there's about 20 hours of work in this, and it kind of doesn't look speeded up, because if you imagine like scribbling with a pencil, it's quite a fast movement. So if you've got a very slow movement like when you're using pyrography, it just looks like you've scribbled, and so it kind of looks natural. And yeah, I've had people sort of going, for example, why is it that sort of money? And it's because it's 20. But I've seen that done on the internet in 10 minutes. Okay, well, you go to that artist and get them to do it in 10 minutes. But thank you. Okay, so not really that happy with that ear shape at the moment. What have we got? Yeah, I've got them here. I'm kind of fiddling with this, but the ear itself here is kind of close to being finished. So what I want to do is get it sort of in a state I'm reasonably happy with. The shape just isn't right to me, because I'm still sort of loose carving at this stage until I've got a sort of shape of this and maybe the jewel. It's sort of half what I call it loose carved. I've got everything roughly at the right sort of levels. I'm starting to apply shape. I've done a fair bit background wise, and this is close to being finished, but I really kind of should do a lot of the block carving, the shape carving, before I start fiddling with exact details. But what I should do, and what I do, you know, is two entirely different things. Kind of like the people that sort of say, you know, when you're writing code, you should write all the modules first and then debug when you've got 90% written. It's kind of like, I don't work that way. I debug as I go along, and I program sort of through multiple iterations. I very rarely write great big long spiels of code before I actually sort of try and run it and test it. Actually, what I find fascinating, talking about coding, and you guys who do the coding on the games and stuff, what I find utterly fascinating is how on earth you actually remember where all the code bits are. I've watched a few of the more professional games coders who are streamed or yes, who are streamed, and I sort of, you know, for some reason you've been looking for the definition of something or the use of something, and you know exactly which in about 20 files it is and where it is in that file to go looking for it. I don't know how you remember. Yeah. It is. It's just actually, just thinking about it, it's one of the reasons I started streaming was because, well, it was because I was dared to do it or challenged to do it, but that's a different story. But one of the sort of justifications was I'd actually at that point, or about 6 months before I started streaming, I'd spent an awful lot of time looking. I wanted to try doing pyrography, and I'd spent an awful lot of time sort of looking around on the internet, looking at YouTube videos for, you know, just trying to get an understanding of how to do it, what you needed to do it, what was nice to have to do it as opposed to what you must have, that sort of thing. And I came across an awful lot of videos where I'd find people who go, this is how you do it, this is how you pyrograph a cat, and it was in the lines of you must do it this way type of thing, and never any particular explanation of why. So when somebody says this is how you pyrograph a cat, you can learn how to do that, okay. But what happens if it's a dog? Or it's a tiger? Is it the same? And because you've learned how to do a cat and just a cat, it may you have a problem sort of translating that. And I used to hate it when I'd see a video that said, how do you do that? Because my first question is, well, literally, I want to do a dog. what's different? Can I use the same techniques, whatever it is? There was very few videos I found like that would actually sort of say why. And that's kind of one of the reasons when I started streaming, I consciously do my best not to say this is how you do it, but I say this is how I do it and this is why I do it that way, so that people can make up their own mind as to whether it's useful for them and potentially adapt what it is. Yeah. I mean, sometimes there are, most definitely, this is how you have to do it. But even when I kind of say, do say this is how you have to do it, like carving a particular direction of wood, you have to do it in a particular direction. That's a 90% have to. You can do it the other way, but here's the dangers if you don't do it that way. It's like I was talking about earlier when I was carving the wood that way. I was in great danger of the wood actually sort of splitting away because I'm carving in the wrong direction. You can, with an extremely sharp chisel, and take great care, and it might be okay. Whereas if you turn the chisel around, do it the other way, you are going to be okay. And that's one of those, you have to do it this way, sort of. I've not had anybody do that, actually, to be honest. There hasn't been too many wood carvers and pyrograph artists that I've seen, or pyrograph artists that do my style of pyrography on Twitch to come in, and those that have seen, well, not said that. What I've actually had is more people coming in and sort of saying, you don't do it like that. Like when I'm carving, you do not carve towards yourself. Why not? Because you might. No, I will stab myself because. So I've had sort of more lay people coming in, shall we say, and indicating that I'm doing something wrong, which is quite. I think it's usually the chisel one that does it. I'm just trying to think. The other thing I do is knife carving, or have done is knife carving, and with knife carving, it literally is a razor sharp knife. They're in the drawer, so I'm not going to get one out. But if you imagine you're holding a knife and the blade is here, and it is a razor sharp blade, and you literally do often carve like this, holding it this hand with the blade, and you're carving towards yourself like this. And the number of people that I have had come in and saying, you don't carve towards yourself, you cut yourself and what have you. And it's kind of like, that's another one of those rules that isn't a rule, it's a guideline for people who don't know what they're doing. Because one thing I wear is a Teflon glove. And the other one is because, again, it's down to technique, it's how you hold things. And when you're holding the carving knives, what you're doing is you let's say I'm carving my hand just for the sake of it. You're driving with your thumb and fingers. You're not using your arm again. So you're driving like that, and your thumb is going against the handle. So you actually stop before your thumb goes anywhere near the blade, and you basically can't cut yourself because of that. And whereas if you cut in that way, you almost have to use the whole of your arm to drive the blade, and that makes it uncontrolled. So it's more dangerous to carve away from yourself with a knife than it is to carve towards yourself, which is kind of counterintuitive, kind of fun when you get people coming in saying, nah. Yes, largely speaking, core muscles. I mean, sometimes there is a preferred way, and there's sometimes there's ways which are more dangerous than others, even though they get the right result that you're after. But yeah, largely speaking, you're right. Yes. Well, it is. It's perfectly possible, of course. I mean, you won't get. Generally speaking, you wouldn't get a usable knife. It'd be okay as a paper, as a letter opener, for example. But one thing I almost did when instead of starting this one, is I almost decided to carve a wand, Harry Potter style, knife carve a wand out of a length of wood. A knife is something I haven't thought about. One thing I've wanted to try is carving spoons. But I don't actually have a spoon gouge. Sorry, I don't actually have a gouge that would enable me to carve the bowl properly. The gouges I have, these are actually called spoon gouges because they are spoon shaped and they are designed to go in and come out of wood, which is what you need when you carve the bowl of a spoon. But generally speaking, spoons have a relatively deep bowl, and none of the chisels I've got are such that I can actually get in deep enough to carve the inside of the bowl, not to do it cleanly anyway. And some of the more specialist spoon chisels actually look a bit weird because the chisel is actually sort of almost tongue off the side, so you're kind of carving like that, but you're actually cutting in the middle. Yeah, I might. There's Wolfie's LOL character, and then there's I might do some knife carving after that. But I probably I don't know when we'll do that, when I finish the Gibberer, as to what I might do as the next subject, because I go through about 5 or 6 different crafts. There's the carving, wood carving. There's pyrography. There is scraperboard. There's the chainmail and other jewellery making. I suppose technically it's imitation jewellery making, because jewellery technically is precious stones, or gold, precious metals and precious stones, according to the taxman anyway in the UK. And the other thing that I do is I always used to do 5, and I always have the problem of I can remember 4 of them. Carving, pyrography, punchcraft. Yeah, making what is essentially miniature rugs. These things. So pictures. So these are made actually very similar to the way rugs are made. These are individual loops of thread, all pushed through from the back with a special needle. That's the 5 crafts. But just recently, I've also been doing glass engraving, airbrush, and something called magic dots, which is not really a craft. It's just a hobby type thing where you're sticking little plastic dots onto a picture. I really do quite a bit. Yes, I if you read below the stream window, it kind of says I've got a short attention span. It's not actually true, because I've got the patience to spend 20 plus hours doing this, or even longer, whatever. But I do like to do a variety of things. If I was permanently carving or permanently doing whatever, I would tend to get a little bit tired of it and want to do something different. So I tend to rotate doing different things. It means I'm not necessarily as good at doing something as I would do if I practiced it all the time, but at least I can do this. I can airbrush. I'm maybe not as good as an artist that does it 100% of the time, but I've got a nice variety of things. Unfortunately though, we're now at 9:15. And I'm now going to spend about... It's not as bad as it usually is actually, but I've got to spend about 15 minutes now tidying up and vacuuming. I have a tarpaulin on the floor, so at least most of this stuff hasn't gone in the carpet, which I'm rather glad about. It takes ages to get out carpet, especially when you've been using the power tools, just because they literally turn wood into sawdust. When it is kind of dust, it's as fine as flour. And in fact, interestingly, this sort of stuff, when it comes out of the big industrial power tools that get used, does actually get called wood flour. I can't remember what they use it for now, but it gets called wood flour because it is as fine as flour. Yes, Dragon Slumber, thank you for coming in. It's been interesting talking to you, and great fun having you around and showing you some other things and talking to you. And because you have an interest in the support stuff, is why for the life of me I can't remember half the stories that I was telling Wolfie the other night. But yeah, certainly all those stories that everybody thinks are made up and fake, because people could not be that ridiculous. Wanna bet? Yeah. So for everybody that is watching, I am sorry. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of the stream for this evening. I will be streaming again tomorrow night. I do, at least for the moment, I am streaming approximately 7 nights a week, subject to the odd things that occur that mean that that's not possible. I try and start as soon after 7 PM UK time. It's GMT or UTC if you know it better at the moment in the UK, so 7 PM GMT. I stream for about 2 hours, give or take a bit. I mean, we're a bit over now, so just as things go. And tomorrow we'll carry on with more of the Gibberer. We've got a nice ear. Needs a bit more shaping, but I can leave that well later. Probably do the other ear and then start. I have no idea how to do the foot at the moment, and I may just cheat and not do it at all. Cover it with fur. I had details sometimes when it doesn't need it. It perhaps doesn't need the foot, and I might just sort of say, it looks as good without a foot there. It might be on the pyrography, it might be on the card, but it isn't on my carving. And then we'll carry on from there. And at some point I'll actually carve the feral Gibberer into there, but we'll probably do that last of all, because some of the lettering, it'll be easy to knock the centres out like the E's, and I don't want to do that beforehand. And I still have to decide what to do about this, whether to actually put that jewel in. And I may just carve it and then decide afterwards, because it can easily come out. So, a couple of things to remind you about. If you'd like to see any of the earlier broadcasts of this, or indeed some of the others, obviously there's 2 weeks of VODs on here on Twitch. If you want to see any of the really early stuff, it's all archived onto YouTube, zaraganart.com. Not zaraganart.com, that's my website. youtube.com/zaraganart. And you can take a look at any of the old broadcasts. There is 700 plus hours of broadcasts there, covering just about all the art forms I was just mentioning a minute ago, and a few other things like making the quadcopter. So if you're not following, it would be fantastic if you would consider doing so, and if you feel like supporting the stream, then of course there's the 2 buttons at the top right that will assist you in doing that, and that contribution goes towards the materials like the wood and the chisels and bits and pieces which is used in the stream. So I hope I'll see you on the next one. Should be tomorrow night, and I'll see you then. Bye for now. Okay, Dragon Slumber, I shall do that. I thought it was there, I'd obviously forgotten, but thank you. Wood is free. I often say, problem with wood is it doesn't grow on trees. It is trees, but it doesn't grow on trees. And I actually have quite a few nice wood discs, but they take a long time to dry out before they can be carved. So getting good wood for dry carving, as opposed to green carving as it's called, is not cheap, especially things like European lime. Peace, thank you for dropping in, and again, hope I'll see you again in the future, and I'll drop in on one of your streams if I get the opportunity. Bye everybody.
Together Yo, what's going on? Yo, what's going on?